Like, is it still worth it? You're paying for somewhere to live, regardless of where or how much or what type of product it is. You're paying for somewhere to live. And yeah, you can make the argument, well, it's a little more expensive or whatever. Well, not in every case, especially in cities where rents are like sky high. Maybe you're putting $1,000 a month back in your pocket with the equity you're gaining. And that's assuming the house doesn't even appreciate in value, which it's almost guaranteed to do. So to me, it still makes sense.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Welcome to episode 192 of the Tom Storey Show. This is our final episode of 2025. Hope everybody is having a great holiday week. We're in this weird zone now between Christmas and New Year's where you're not really sure what day it is, why you're still wearing your pajamas, but hopefully everybody had an awesome Christmas with their friends and their family. This week's guest is Andrew Stevens, coming to us all the way. Well, it's not really that far from Toronto, but all the way from Halifax. And ladies, he's a married man, so eyes off, just audio for the rest of the episode. Andrew, welcome back to the show. Newly married.
Thanks, man.
Is what I should have said.
Newly married. Thank you for having me. I have a lot of titles: broker, realtor, dog dad, now husband, and
mustache man.
Friend of the Tom Storey Show is probably up there in the top 5. You know, so thanks for having me. It's always nice to get on here and chop it up.
Yeah, man. Welcome back. And for those that that haven't been introduced to Andrew yet, he has an awesome YouTube channel that covers the Halifax market. And you're putting out awesome stuff, really, really good videos. And congrats on that channel growing a lot over the last year. That's been fun for you, eh?
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been a good ride for sure. It's a grind.
Yeah. People don't realize how much time and energy and effort it takes to film, record, post a video, and then within 10 seconds, someone's like, "Realtors suck" in the comments. You're like, all right, well, I tried really hard on this one.
Yeah, the devastation of thinking you have the idea of the century that's going to take off, and then you look 3 days later and it has 300 views, and you're like, sick. I'm glad I put a lot of energy into that one.
Yes, it didn't click. And then you have a video, you're like, I just need to post something this week. I'm just going to record something really quick. And it does like way better than all the videos you spend hours and hours putting premises together to make sure they're really good. Speaking of something that I want to take off, I got 2 housekeeping items before we get into the conversation today. Steve, we passed 8,000 subscribers on the podcast channel. Do you see that?
Yay.
So
and that's what we got for it. We got to
yay.
Woo, keep going. Keep going, you jerks. It's just like posting a new video. It's like you get called a jerk the second you pass your goal.
Yeah. Well, so, thank you everybody that's subscribed recently, because I know the subscribers have gone up a lot in December. And we didn't think we'd make it by the end of the year, but you guys are awesome. You got subscribed to the channel. I just want to say thank you. And also, me and Steve, Andrew, you don't know about this yet, but on January the 22nd, we're actually going to do a 2026 webinar series for the Tom Storey Show. And that is webinar number 1, January the 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. PST. And it's going to be a first-time homebuyer webinar. The link will be somewhere in the description of this episode, Steve. I'll send it to you somewhere in the description. Okay. And because Zoom just likes to charge you more and more the more people you get on your webinars, this is legitimately maxed at 300 people, not some scarcity marketing tactic. Like, it really is. So if you guys are interested, or you have a friend or family that's looking to get into the market in 2025, the great part about this webinar is that I'm from Toronto. Steve is from outside Vancouver, but wherever you are in Canada, you can join the webinar. And if you want to buy your first property, we can connect you with an amazing realtor like Andrew if you're looking in Halifax. So get signed up to that webinar. All right, guys, we're wrapping up the year. Andrew, what did 2025 look like to you in your real estate market?
Yeah, we were a lot slow. We're like slowing down for sure. So price points are still up year over year. We're up about 4% on the average home price. Sales are pretty flat, about 1% or 2% up. That one kind of shocked me a little bit. And I think like when I made my predictions for this year, I thought sales would be up a little bit more like 8 to 10%, because we had a really low year last year. But of course, you know, I made my predictions video and threw it out there for the world to see. And then tariffs were announced, and then they announced, you know, decreases to the immigration and all these things. So, you know, I think consumer confidence is low, maybe coming back and trending back toward the right area, I think, in my market anyway. Prices are kind of stabilizing, I would say. We're not seeing really a lot of multiple offer situations anymore. We're seeing the odd one, but like out of nowhere here in the last 2 or 3 months, I'm starting to see, like a semi-detached home that's 20, 30 minutes outside the downtown core that is listed at $399,999, and they're expecting multiple offers and they don't even get an offer. And I'm kind of like shocked to see that, because it's something I haven't seen in literally 5 or 6 years.
And when they were expecting multiples, was it to go over that number or just get lots of traction? Like what number did they expect, or what did they relist at?
Yeah, they probably thought they were going to get like 415, 419.9, 4.
Okay, so nothing crazy.
425. Okay. No, like now we're not seeing like the $100,000 over like we were or anything like that. People are pricing relatively around market value, or in a lot of cases a little bit higher, and then those homes are sitting there. So inventory's on the rise slightly. Last year we ended off around 2.3, 2.4 months. Right now we're sitting just over 3, but it's also kind of the time of year too. But definitely a softening from the top down for sure, like in the upper price ranges. And then on the lower end, starting to see a little bit of softening, which is great news for like first time home buyers, especially. So average price point here is just under 600. Anything kind of below 500 is still quite competitive, but yeah, we're starting to see some signs of a more balanced type market, if that even exists. I would just say it's just trending back towards a buyer's market, really.
Right.
But yeah, we're seeing inventory levels we haven't seen in years. So to me, the market feels a lot more normal. And I think a lot of agents are having a hard time wrapping their head around that this is normal, because like if you started in 2020 or 2021 or even 2019, you've never seen the market that I started in 2014 with 11 months of listing inventory, right? So I kind of started at a major buyer's market, and then it kind of came, full circle down to an extreme seller's market during the, 2020, 2021, 2022. And now we're kind of drifting back up to what I would consider as a more stable and more realistic and more healthy real estate market. So buyers are starting to like me a little bit more, but now sellers hate me, so that's kind of where that's kind of where we're at. And I just think that the expectations of the consumer haven't fully caught up with where we're actually at yet. So like I might sit with somebody on the listing side and say, I think we should be listed at $699,999. And I think, we might get an offer in the first 7 to 10 days, but realistically it's probably going to take 3 or 4 weeks, might take 60 to 90 days. But then after a week, they're antsy, they're mad at me, they're saying, why is their house not selling? And it's like, we just had this conversation. But, and I just think that from a consumer perspective, I think this is what happens, right? So you have all these different micro markets that are acting different and performing different, whether it's price point, whether it's neighborhood, whatever. And there's some neighborhoods here that are still very, very hot. But what happens is somebody lists their home in a suburban area that's maybe not so hot. Maybe in that area, there's 8, 9, or 10 months of listing inventory in their price range. They list their home. It's been on the market for a month. Then they go into the office, and somebody who listed their home in a completely different area, in a completely different price range, listed on Thursday and got 2 offers on Sunday, they're talking about their experience. And then you have that seller of like the listing that I have sitting there saying, well, how come my home's not selling? Why is my agent not getting my home sold? But they're 2 completely different markets and areas, right? So in my area right now, it really depends what you have. The good product that is well priced and well looked after and maintained, and they kind of did all the little things to get it ready for the market that you should do, that you didn't have to do for years. Those properties are still selling, and they're still selling for what I would consider a very good price range, like a healthy price range that the seller should be pretty happy about. But then there's a lot of stuff on the market now that I would consider to be overpriced, and not really prepared the right way for the market. So that inventory is kind of sitting around. So I feel like we have 2 weird pockets where it's like you have a lot of homes that are selling within 2 or 3 weeks for pretty good price points. And then you have like an abundance of inventory that's been sitting around for a while because it's 50 grand overpriced or whatever it is. And I think that sellers are having a hard time wrapping their head around, looking for a possible buyer, but not necessarily a probable buyer. So it's like, yeah, maybe somebody will pay $750 for this in a perfect world, but I don't see it happening. But if they get a unicorn buyer that comes along, somebody from Ontario or something like that just loves the house, maybe they pay $750. But really, the right buyer for this house is looking to pay $699.9. So the difference of what's possible, sure, anything's possible, but what's probable is 50 grand less than where they're at. And I think that a lot of that comes down to motivation. I think a lot of sellers are, they'll sell if they get their number, but their number might not be very probable in today's market. So I just think like a lot of it comes down to expectations of the consumer. A lot of it comes down to us as professionals setting expectations, and probably a lot of people not doing a very good job at that. But yeah, it's slower, but it's more normal, more healthy. I like the market that we're in right now, personally. And I think that a lot of consumers might think that like we love the COVID pandemic market where like everything, is crazy, but realistically, I don't really ever want that to happen again in my market anyway.
Yeah, I have experienced lately. I was doing an evaluation for somebody, and that unicorn buyer bought a unit in their building, and now that's my I guess most recent comparable. And it's like, so I actually phoned the agent and I was like, I don't understand how you got that price. And she's like, listen, I'm pretty sure like their family lived in the building. They were coming from out of town. It was a top floor. It showed perfect. She's like, I had no other activity on that. Like I had one showing, one offer. And it was done in a week, and now it's 10% higher than anything else I can make an argument for. So now I have that seller that is stuck on that 10% higher price. And it's just like, I mean, I don't know unless we can find somebody else's relative that wants to live in the building, I think we're going to be in tough here. And it does make it does make it hard for the sellers to see around that, because you can provide them with 10 recent sales that are all, say, I don't know, $600,000. And they're going to hang on to the one that sold at $669. But that one got $669.
Of course.
Right? So that's the only, and the other ones they're like completely blind to. They can't see that part of the paper. They can only see from here up. They can't see from here down. It's super frustrating, but that's the curse of the realtor. We're just trying to get a quick, cheap, easy sale, right?
But it's tough too, right? Because like you could do a better job than the other realtor with your listing, but there's nothing you can do to control that situation manifested itself and they got lucky. Like that's what it is. They got lucky. And what percentage of time does that actually happen? Not much, but still the idea, even you bringing this up on the show, Steve, is there will be people listening right now being like, well, that could happen in my place. It's like, it could, but I don't know what percentage we're working with. Andrew, you said a few things there that I wrote down I want to ask you about. So first of all, it's really interesting, right? Because we're all in our own market bubbles, and you just talked about the micro markets. You mentioned you were last year at 2.5 months of inventory. Now you guys are slightly over 3, and then that's a tame market. I'm like, we've had 8 months of condo inventory. Steve's got 14 months of detached home inventory. So just like interesting, right? Like perspective is so important here from where we were to where we are today. You also mentioned that unicorn buyer is the silly people coming over from Toronto and other parts of Ontario. Is that still happening? Because I know that was a big part of your market 2 years ago. Are they still buying? Don't you have to live there to buy in Halifax? Isn't it like a rule?
So we have a out of province deed transfer tax addition. So deed transfer tax in my area is 1.5% of the purchase price. If you're coming from out of town, if you're going to move in as your primary residence within 6 months, then you avoid the extra deed transfer tax, which is 10%. Okay. So like, it's a crazy amount of money, right? So in all honesty, this hasn't affected my business in a big way. But it has a little bit. Like I have a condo listing right now that's like a luxury condo, waterfront views, really nice spot. It's like just under $1 million, and a buyer really liked it that saw it a couple weeks ago. But they're coming in from out of province, and it's not going to be their permanent residence, and the D transfer tax just kind of killed it for them, right? So I'm sure like in cottage country and like down the South Shore and North Shore, places like that, they're feeling that big time. But in my market, not really. Like I'm dealing with mostly end users. We're still seeing some migration from out of province for sure, but it's nothing compared to what it was in 2020 or 2021, 2022. But, I still dealt with a handful this year anyway, like off the top of my head, since the middle of the year, probably 3 or 4 buyers coming in from out of province.
Okay.
Most of them are moving due to work. And like a lot of them too, I think what a lot of people don't realize is like a lot of those people coming from Ontario are actually from Nova Scotia, and they moved to Ontario maybe
they're coming home
10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And now they've been there, they've crushed it with work. They have a home that they paid $800,000 for that's now worth $1.6 million. They have 2 kids that are now 10, 12 years old. And it's just kind of like the right time. Their grandparents, their parents are still here. They want some more help with family. They can keep a lot of them are keeping their job in the other province, whether it's Ontario or out west. So they're moving home, taking advantage of, and we talked about this last time, taking advantage of those cheaper real estate prices, but they're also taking advantage of the fact that they're getting paid Ontario or out west wages compared to the low wages that we're seeing here in Nova Scotia. So that's a huge issue in my market. And that's what I see as kind of the biggest threat to my market is like this like affordability gap. And I've talked about it on my channel a lot, that what the average household can afford is nowhere near what the average home price is. And that's been kind of like widening and widening over the last several years because wages just haven't kept up. Like wages here were low anyway. And the only saving grace was that the cost of living and the cost of real estate was also low. And now that's not necessarily the case. Cost of living is through the roof, utilities, and we're high taxes, we're low wages. And now our real estate is kind of, caught up, so to speak, to a lot of the other areas in Canada, even though it's cheap compared to Toronto or Vancouver. But, what happens when the majority of people can't afford real estate? What happens to the market, especially as you see a decrease in migration from other provinces, as you see a decrease in immigration? So I think we're in for a bit of a reality check, so to speak. I think we're in for a bit of a flat couple of years here, like reasonably flat. I think it'll still, like prices will still increase. And I think sales will probably increase quite a bit next year, but I don't foresee any major jumps or changes coming because I just think that the majority of people are priced out. We're not building anything that's like the missing middle. Everything we're building is basically apartments, and they're $2,800 a month, which most people can't afford.
You guys got purpose-built rentals coming to your market as well? Is that a thing out there?
Oh, man, we have in HRM, so like Halifax and surrounding area, we have about 13,000 housing units under construction right now, which is like a record high.
Your real estate website should work as hard as you do. And that's where Realty Ninja comes in to create a beautiful website that helps you convert online leads, that doesn't give you all these tech issues and will match with the brand that you already have. Steve's been using Realty Ninja for over 10 years, and we have a promo code for listeners of the Tom Storey Show. RealtyNinja.com/Tom will give you 20% off your first year, and you don't pay a dollar until your website launches. RealtyNinja.com/Tom. And now, back to the podcast. Apartments, like rentals?
So of those 13,000 housing units, only about 1,500 are homes.
Right.
So, and all those are 800 plus, which the average household can afford like 450 to 500. So that's the gap, right? The gap is the missing middle. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. First, it comes to construction, but also when you look at our market, all the rentals are, 2,500 plus a month. So I think a lot of older folks are staying in their homes longer because it doesn't make sense to move. So they're not moving out of their home that might be worth 4, 5, 600,000, which would open it up for somebody to move into on like a first time home buyer or a young couple perspective. So I think there's so much ripple effect, I think, in the market when you look at what's happening. But I think that affordability gap is the biggest issue that we have here right now that I see causing more issues in the future.
Steve, why are you smirking over there? What do you got on your mind?
I was just thinking, like,
Steve has a smirk on his face.
It's
just such a great,
moving.
Great opportunity. It's great opportunity, right? You've got all these people that won't move on out of their houses. So it sounds like a new tax is coming. For all you people that have been living in your houses and paying your taxes for so long, guess what? You're maybe 65 and older detached tax. How about that? You guys seem to do taxes better than BC does taxes.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of taxes. Isn't your HST like 15%?
It just dropped to 14. Hallelujah. So everybody now has a lot more money in their pocket. So we're heavily taxed on the income side, like on the income tax side. We're heavily taxed on the HST side. Property taxes go up every single year. Every year the council puts out their proposed budget. It's usually around 8 to 12% is what they're looking for to increase property taxes. And then it ends up being 5 or 6. Utility costs are going through the roof, like Halifax water costs are going up, Nova Scotia power costs are going up. And it's like the amount that we're taxed is, first of all, crazy. The deed transfer tax that was added in is another crazy one to me. Like we're all Canadian, right? So like, how come someone from Ontario can't buy a property here? Like that just, to me, that is like insane. But the property tax thing is interesting because the other aspect is they're talking about two things with taxes right now in Nova Scotia. One is they're talking about changing deed transfer tax and making it like a tiered system. So in other words, congratulations, you have enough money to buy a home that is $1 million. You're going to pay more deed transfer tax than somebody.
Sounds familiar.
Right. And then, so you have that's potentially coming down the pipeline that's kind of being talked about now and just brought up. And the other thing we have that's interesting, we're the only province that has a cap on property taxes. So if you own your home, and so if I buy a home tomorrow, my assessment is whatever, and then my taxes are based on my assessment. After a year, if I'm living in the property, my assessment is capped. So my assessment will keep going up, but my capped assessment can only go up. I think it's connected to the CPI. Okay. So in other words, if like my taxes on my house personally right now are somewhere in the realm of like $8,000 a year, which
what would your value be of your house?
About 1.25, give or take today. But I bought it at whatever, 560 something years ago before the pandemic. But here's the point. Actually, I think my taxes are closer to 7,000. So if I sell my home tomorrow, in January, the cap comes off. And now that new owner is going to be hit with a tremendous increase to those property taxes. It'll be more like $10,000 a year because now they're getting basically taxed on like a $1 million home as opposed to I'm basically getting taxed on like a $700,000 home. But here's the problem. They keep pushing property tax percentages up every year, every time the budget comes out. But you might see a street where if there's a street with 30 homes, 22 of them might be capped from like pre-pandemic values, and they're paying taxes on basically like a $500,000 home when all the homes in the area are 8, 9, or $1 million, and then the new buyers coming in are paying like double the property taxes. So how is that?
Do they know fair? That when they buy it? Do they know it's gonna, like, is that in a listing in your market that shows like what it's capped at? How do you judge how
much it's going to go up?
Yeah.
You basically are just looking at the current assessment and then what the new price point's going to be, and then what the logical assessment's going to be going forward. And you can kind of ballpark where it's going to be. But yeah, I have to tell all my buyers, like, so when I get a tax bill, especially if somebody's been living there forever, it's basically irrelevant. I get it because it's going to the lender to get a financing approval, but maybe their property taxes are $4,000, and in my head, I'm like, just so you know, your property taxes are going to be like $6,000 next year. Like this is way, way lower than what it's actually going to be. So there's talks of, do we take the cap system off? Do we change it? That is a whole disaster in itself because, you've got like, if you got somebody who's 80 years old and their property taxes are like $3,000 and all of a sudden they're $6,000, that's a big deal. Right. So yeah, there's some things coming down the pipeline that could have pretty big impact on our market as a whole. But yeah, that's an interesting one because we're the only province that has that cap system. So I'll be curious to see kind of what comes down the pipeline with that in the future.
So an Ontario investor that's looking at Halifax, you get to pay 10% of the current assessed value in land transfer tax. And then when you buy it and close on, you find out the property taxes also go up 40%. Like, that's crazy.
Pretty much. Yeah. But like, you can see on the tax bill, like what the assessment is and then what the cap is. So like you can see, okay, the assessment's 800, but this current tax bill is being paid on 600, for example. So you have a good idea of where it's going to go. And that deed transfer tax from out of province, there's an exception if it's over 3 units. So if it's 4 units or more, they're not getting
tend to do that
extra tax on there. But I mean, the investment world in Halifax is dead. Honestly, like that's a part of my business that basically doesn't exist anymore. And the rent cap is a big reason for that too. A huge reason.
Us too. That's a part of the argument that everybody loses when they talk about U.S. Investing in real estate and how the U.S. has so much more affordable homes. First of all, they obviously never talk about the difference in currency, which is hilarious. As this is airing, I'm on my flight right now to Tucson to go hang out down there. And a friend of mine bought a house down there. The property taxes are insane. Insane. It's not uncommon in a lot of U.S. states to have on a modest home $10,000 or $20,000 worth of different. And they've got this weird thing where they'll actually in some areas make like an HOA, almost like a strata after the fact, and then people have no choice but to be looped into these HOAs for detached homes. Like it's just a crazy. Sure, the actual ticket price in US dollars is very low. But when you translate that into Canadian dollars and then also translate that into crazy high property taxes and other things, it's no better there than it is anywhere else.
And
it honestly
capital
really
gains works different in the States too. It's not tax-free on your primary residence with your house. You pay a capital gain.
Yeah, each state
if you're not thing. Okay.
But there is capital gain over a certain amount of money on your, but then you can also write off your mortgage.
Right. So I guess there's trade-offs,
Yeah, you get to write off your mortgage, and then you also, they've got the, what do we call it, the 1031 exchange. So if you buy,
that's a big one.
It is big, but it's also got lots of challenges as well.
But that's mostly that's investment capital gains, right? This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Carson Dunlop. Real estate agents, you spend months, if not years, earning your clients' trust. You don't want to lose it on inspection day. For over 45 years, top agents across Canada have relied on Carson Dunlop for home inspections that are clear, calm, and client first. Their inspections don't just find issues, they know how to explain them in a way that will protect your client and your credibility. If you haven't worked with Carson Dunlop yet, now is the time to find out why Canada's best trust Carson Dunlop for home inspections. You can learn more at carsondunlop.com. I will also tell you, in the Toronto real estate market, whenever I see a pre-home inspection by Carson Dunlop, I know my buyers can trust it. And Carson Dunlop is a company we've used so many times over the years for our buyers and sellers. carsondunlop.com. And now back to the podcast. I guess
correct,
everything would,
okay. When you sell one property, you have to identify within a certain amount of time 3 other properties that you might be buying in exchange. So it's you've got a certain amount of time to flip it. So it's not like you can take this money out and then wait for the right property to come along. You have to take that money out, sell that property, and then like identify a property and close on that property within a certain amount of time. So it's not as easy as everybody thinks, but I get that question all the time. Whenever somebody sells an investment property, they're like, okay, well, I'm going to roll this into the next one. I'm like, no, you're not. You're going to take 21% of your lift and you're going to give it directly to the government, plus whatever other taxes you're going to need to pay. So
over the last 50-year mortgage, and that's no big deal, lock it in for 50 years.
I mean, no one's going to have a mortgage for 50 years. So I feel like if it's your way in the market, I might be in my own in this one, but like, you should still sell it in 5 years. You can still sell it in 10 years. I don't know. I had something good, Steve, and I completely lost it. It'll come back to me. Andrew, you're talking about how your market, like investments, are completely dead. I had my men's league hockey last night, and like one of my buddies is in insurance for the buildings, and one of my buddies is in commercial lending. And I was like, "What's happening?" Like, nothing. Purpose-built rentals is the only thing being built. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening. Nothing. No one's investing. No one's buying. There's no housing coming other than rentals. So conspiracy theory, Steve, this was the plan all along. We're all just going to rent.
No, but I was listening to Graham Stephan, he's had so much good stuff lately because he's divesting of his stuff in California right now. But I was listening to his Iced Coffee Hour, and he was chatting with a guy, and I've never heard this perspective before, where this guy was, he's a real estate investor. He's one of those, like, use somebody else's money type guys. And he's just like, why do you think we had such a crazy boom? And he's not talking about the pandemic boom of spending too much money. He's talking about like the 2015 to 2019. He's like, why do you think that was that we went through that? And he's like, because we built nothing from 2008 to 2014.
After that crash.
Like, after that whole crash for let's call it 6-7 years, we had no new home starts. So then when the economy does get better, which it eventually always does, it's a cycle. He's like, then you had that 2015 thing and everything just went crazy. He's
and
like,
rates were low still.
Everything. Like if you go through a period of time of, I don't know, baking bread, and then the bread market crashes and nobody bakes bread and you just use the bread that you baked, eventually you're going to run out of bread and people are going to want bread. So you're going to have to make up for it when the people can afford it. And in a period of time when you're trying to produce that product and you've got none of it and people want it, the prices are going to drive up again. And so he's like, his whole theory was, this is going to happen again. It's probably going to be a period of time, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of where we have a bad market and nothing's getting built.
I mean, it's happening right now.
Exactly his point. It's happening again right now. So he's like, I'm buying as much as I possibly can because there's going to be a spot when we get to the other side of this, whatever this is right now and however long this lasts, where inevitably we're not going to have enough of what we need in the future. And I was like, it's the first time I've ever heard it explained that way.
It's so reactive, right? So like here, out of nowhere, we have 13,000 housing units under construction, whereas we would usually have like 4, 5, 6,000. And now what's going to happen is because of the cost of building and all the development charges and all these things, these rentals have to be priced at like $25, $26, $27, $28, $100 a month, which is like not what is actually needed in our market right now. So you have all this inventory that's about to hit the market. You have all these people that can't afford it. And you're going to see a softening in my market from the top down of rents. And we're already seeing that.
Yeah.
But you're going to see a huge push from the bottom up because of the rent cap. Because if you have somebody who is in a place that's $1,200 a month and they walk out the door, now all of a sudden you have that unit jumping from $1,200 to $2,000 or $1,200 to $1,800 without even doing anything to it. So my point is we're about to have a flood of inventory. And then developers are probably going to have sandwich boards on the sidewalk saying, I'll give you a year of free internet or a year of free parking or whatever it is, incentives. And we're already seeing some of that, especially in the newer kind of luxury apartment market. And then what you're going to have is developers, in theory, starting to scale back because they can't fill what they already have. And then eventually it will catch up. Yeah. And then we're going to be in the same, like it's always reactive, right? It's not like proactively looking at it and saying, okay, we're over the next 5 years adding X number of people in theory, and this is what we're going to need. It's so reactive to the problem that we're always chasing one way or the other, whether it's, chasing upward or chasing downward.
Speaking of reactive, did you see this, Tom? I don't know if it's probably only local news here, but something like 13 of the municipalities, easy word to say, and cities around Metro Vancouver, or I guess across the province, the mayors all got together and they signed basically a letter and had a big press conference to fight back against the multiplex zoning because they're all having so much trouble with it. So I saw there's multiplexes popping up everywhere now that I'm seeing, and a lot of them just look like, I guess they look like duplexes, but really tall duplexes. But I was driving down my dad's street the other day. I went to go visit the family, and I'm driving down the street, and there's like this duplex lot, and it actually got torn down. And now what they're building is a 3-story above ground duplex in the front, which I'm sure is at least 5,000 square feet. And it for sure has behind the garage, which is on the main floor, a basement rental in each one. But then, so because it was just, they were just done framing, they're boarding up all the walls. I could see through the garage and I could see through the back into the backyard. They built a duplex garden home in the backyard that was bigger than the original duplex that was on the property. Of which I'm wondering if it's going to have basement suite. So 2-story duplex in the backyard and then 3-story duplex in the front yard. It's crazy.
Okay. We've just spent the last 20 minutes talking about the fact that we have no missing middle housing. And it sounds like they're building it in your area, Steve, and you're poo-pooing on it. So tell me where where is that magic thing? Because we're only building rentals. At least in BC, they're doing this. People are stratifying those units and you can buy them, not just rent them. Like, at least they're doing it. Are the mayors getting together because enough people are just complaining to them about their neighbors? Is that what this is?
Definitely the mayors getting complained to is what's going to motivate them. But then the interview that they had was with the mayor of, I think it was Poco. It was either Poco or Pitt Meadows. And so that's a small city, relatively. It's right here in Metro Vancouver, but it's relatively a small city. And she was like, just so you guys are aware of our housing targets and what we need to do. 80% of my city is in agricultural land reserve. She's like, 60% of it is in floodplain. Right? So she's breaking down all of these, the actual land mass that they have and the housing targets that were broken down. She's like, we can't. Oh, the best part was they have a municipal airport there, like just a small airport, but it's an airport. So they actually have provincial or federal, I guess it's an airport, federal laws about how high they can build. So they can't build. She's like, we can't build in the floodplains. We can't build in the ALR. We can't build in the mountains. We can't build up, and we can't dig down because we're, again, already in a floodplain. Which way are we building here, guys? So
that's one example, though, Steve. That's one place where you can make the argument it doesn't make sense, but everywhere else it makes sense.
It doesn't make sense everywhere else. That's why we have individual cities. The cities are supposed to be able to go, you know what, given our geographics, given whatever we have here, these are the challenges we have, so we have to do something. Now, I don't disagree with the fact that stuff should be encouraged to be reduced in the amount of regulation, because nothing gets built because there's too much regulation. But to say that the city of Vancouver should have the same regulation as whatever, pick an island city, pick an interior city, is absolutely stupid. And on top of that, you've got, for instance, the city of Vancouver, who has said no more gas furnaces, no more gas fireplaces are allowed. So now we need to electrify the entire thing. How much amperage do you think you need to get to a 6-plex on a 3,000 square foot lot? And then every single home is going to be like, what are you going to have?
Slightly less than me asking
electrician.
ChatGPT one question.
What?
You don't know how much energy it takes? The AI servers? Okay, anyways, it doesn't matter.
We
won't go there. We won't go there.
No. Okay, yeah. That's a whole another thing. Don't worry. Okay. Danielle Smith's going to fix that one. What I'm saying is that I'm going to say what's the amperage required on the modern house right now? 400 amps, something like that. Like, it's crazy.
Is it that much?
And now you're gonna do that times 6. Yeah, my house is 125.
And every house is 8,000 square feet.
Right, they're getting bigger. Yeah.
Well, we
overbuild homes here big time, especially in my market.
Size of homes,
all the new stuff they're building is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Not needed.
Detached homes are all 5,000 square feet for some reason with 6 bathrooms. And then they're like, oh, where's the missing middle? It's like, yeah, okay, missing middle. I know where the missing middle needs to be. It needs to be low-rise 3-bedroom condos.
I think
1,200 square foot 3-bedroom condos. Build those everywhere as far as you can, but nobody apparently wants to build that.
I think when Ravi was the housing minister and he made the decision to overrule all the municipalities and just say these are the rules for multiplexes, I'm obviously not speaking for him, but this is what my thoughts would be. Is here like, this is the cost of doing business. People will complain, but the good of this in the future will be worth it for all the complaints that come in, for the housing that we build, for that. You know, we just talked about how we're overbuilding houses and now nobody wants to buy condos. Is this not the middle ground?
You are wrong, Tom Storey.
Tell me why.
Andrew was right. Andrew is right. Reactive. Everything's reactive. We're in a housing crisis, so they go, okay, good. We're going to not have any regulations anymore. We're going to let you build whatever you want. Then they build whatever they want, and then all the complaints come in. Look at this crap that they're building. I can't believe they're building this crap. And then
there's no winning. Again. We've had Brad Lamb on this show, and he spent the whole hour complaining about how regulations are making home prices more expensive because you can't build anything in Toronto, can't get the height that you need. And now we're relaxing on them, and we're going to complain on the other side. Like, I just don't know.
Well, you're talking about condo, like high-rise condo, 50-story high-rise condo.
It's still
probably
housing.
A good idea to have
still
some
housing.
regulation, but probably some good
You're never
idea
going to
to
make
have
everybody happy.
Yeah,
I'm trying.
That's the reality, right? Because like if like a lot of people, like there's probably a lot of people in Halifax that hate what's happening, right? Like, oh, you're killing the vibe of our city. You're adding too many, you know, like our skyline's changing drastically within my, like a kilometer from my house in the west end of Halifax. I'm like a 20-minute walk from downtown. You're talking 30 buildings going up just around me. A lot of people hate that. I hate some of them, but I think a lot of them make sense. And I think it just depends, right? And I think there's a happy medium there. But you have a lot of people who have lived here a long time that do not want to see Halifax grow the way that it has. They don't want to see like the diversity that we're seeing now. A lot of people here are small-minded. It just is what it is. But like, you're never going to make everybody happy. That's kind of the reality of it. No different than like, I'm a brokerage owner, and every time we do anything that, you know, we make a change, well, you know, we get 85 agents. So there's going to be 20 that don't like it. Doesn't matter what we do, whether it's where we go for our Christmas party or whether it's, you know, what we have for certain rules in our brokerage or whatever. You know, we got Tom coming in the new year. Some people are going to be super pumped, and some people are going to be like, "Who's this idiot on our call right now?" You know, like that's just the way that it is.
Yeah, when I apologize in advance when I come speak to your brokerage. I'm actually thinking about that. I'm like, did I put that in my calendar? I think I did.
I want to touch on one thing, Tom, before you
riding on you.
Tom, before you get back into whatever is on your list, I saw this.
I haven't touched on one point on our notes for today, by the way. Good. I haven't talked about one thing we said we were going to talk about.
Have you seen this thing where apparently Canada's population shrunk last quarter by 70,000 people for the first time ever?
Yep.
Totally anecdotal. I was on my way here this morning, and sure, it could be holiday time and it could be all that stuff. Maybe a bunch of people are out of town, but I left early because for some reason Andrew lives in the future by like 17 hours. I don't know how
compared to
Halifax
you.
Is like
it's 4 hours ahead of you. Yeah.
But so we're recording early. When I leave my house early in the morning, it's usually before a lot of people. So the parking, the streets are packed with cars. This morning, it was eerie how few cars were out. There was open parking all over my neighborhood.
It's December.
It was crazy. Yeah, except what does everybody do? Take their cars and drive them back? Like, where are the cars? So I understand if they're on trips, but what I'm saying, it's the first time I felt like, wait a minute, is there maybe fewer people in my neighborhood? It was a crazy feeling. I've never felt like, usually it's like you got to pull over, wait for the car to go that way, pull back out, right? I didn't have that this morning. This morning was like, I pulled up to the stop sign that I always pull up to, that I have to like inch out around to see around the car that's parked too close to the no parking sign. There was none of that. There was open spaces everywhere. So I'm trying to figure out, like, I actually feel for the first time in 5 years that maybe it was because I saw this news story. Maybe the simulation is just running in a certain way. I don't know what it is, but I feel like this is the first time where I felt my neighborhood is actually there's fewer people here.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing in your mind?
It's not going to be a great thing for real estate prices. Let me tell you that. As I found out with
what about for lifestyle?
I think it's fantastic.
Right.
Like, this is what this for us. So Andrew, in my market, I don't have what you have. We have had, to put it frank, a shit year all year. If I get my 3 subject removals this week, we will tie our worst year ever for transactions. So I'll be happy about that.
Thank goodness for the stock market though this year, because if you had real estate and stocks, at least one of them did well this year.
That's true. They have made up for it. But I'm talking about my business. So I'm just looking at the prices here. The detached in City of Surrey in March, it went up in January, February. It peaked in March at 162, and it dropped now to 1495. So let's say it dropped $120,000 across the overall city. Last month it actually went up, by the way. Went back up $7,000. So I'm calling the bottom here, Tom Storey.
What does that mean? That means nothing.
But
by the way, Andrew, we're not having a pity party
decline
for you in Halifax that your average sale price dropped to 1.5 million when Andrew's slinging $400,000 properties the same size.
That's true.
He's got a pretty good market going on over there. Like here, I have seen the decline has been legitimate. When you were talking about your year and you're like, oh yeah, we got some inventory now, and we're not getting over asking, we're not getting multiple offers. I was like, this seems like 2 years ago for us, and now we're not in that anymore.
Well, I feel like a lot of times we're trailing you guys to some extent. Like we're trailing the bigger markets. Like usually, like when I'm watching what's happening in Toronto, it's like 6 to 12 months later, it seems like not like exactly, but we're seeing kind of bits of that kind of funnel down to us. It's not like my best year on record, but I had a good year and I'm up year over year. And I would say I had a very especially the last 90 days heading into my wedding, I was extremely distracted. So I'm pretty happy with my year overall. But now, of course, like this time of year, I'm looking at the spreadsheet, wiping the spreadsheet clean going into 2026, only have a couple deals on the board so far. And it's like, I get the same thing every year. It's like, how the hell am I going to do that again? But every year I do it, but I don't know. It's an uneasy feeling every year. And it doesn't matter. Like I've been doing this since 2014. I've been a quote unquote top producing agent, whatever the hell that even means anymore. It's like my least favorite term in the industry.
As long as it's in your Instagram bio, it's legit. That's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's like, I've been that for, the better part of, 8 years, but every year I have that same feeling of how in the hell am I going to find that many people that are going to move again? But
and then they do. And the market is just the market. Like I will tell you guys, it was a real interesting year for me because on paper, Steve, I've told you this, not on the podcast, our team sold 15% more properties this year than last year. It was my second best year for transaction volume, number of homes. So we sold 106 properties in 2025. And guess what? My revenue was down 11%, even though I did 15% more business. So this is just the reality of these are the markets we're in. And going back to years before, and just to be clear, I'm not complaining about this. I was working the same amount and transactions were just higher and prices were going up and I was making more. So it's just recorrecting and resetting back to maybe if you average them all out where it maybe would have been for our business anyways. I want to actually ask a question. I feel like we haven't asked any questions yet on this show, Andrew.
Topic number one, Tom.
Number one.
We're getting to it.
2026 predictions. Let's all do our predictions for our markets. Andrew, you want to get us started? What is going on with Halifax in 2026? And these are all guarantees, right? To be clear, you can put bets on these.
Yeah, and if you look at my prediction video every year, you'll see that I'm extremely accurate every year for sure. I would say price wise in Halifax, we're looking at slight growth, 1-2%. I think we're going to be relatively flat on that front. Sales, I think we're probably looking at 5, 6, 7%. I would say. I think consumer confidence is going to come back a little bit as the price points flatten out. I think that because we're seeing a softening, especially in the more affordable market, I think that's going to bring a little more demand back into the market. And then inventory wise, I think we're going to be somewhere in the 3 to 4. I think what we're at now, I think it might grow a little bit. But probably 3 to 4 months. So, kind of a seller's market approaching a balanced market, if that's what we want to call it. But it's weird because that 3 months inventory, it feels like there's so much on because
compared to 1.5.
Little.
Buying insurance is boring and frustrating, but SquareOne.ca makes it easy. For your landlord, tenant, or homeowner insurance policy, go to squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show to get your free quote in just minutes. Use our link, squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show right now, and you'll save $20.
But the thing is, like, that 3 months inventory in HRM is really like several micro markets that have 1 to 2 months, several markets that have 2 to 3 months, and then a ton of markets that have like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? Like, that's kind of the reality. So, yeah, it really depends, like, what you're trying to do and whatever.
I'm glad you said that, because this is something we talked about with Bill Parnaby when we did an episode with him, is the inventory levels. Going from 2 months of inventory to 3 months of inventory means that you're going from 50% of the home selling to 33% of the home selling every month. That is actually a massive change, even though 2 to 3 still sounds like, oh, it's still pretty good. Where then the further you go up the months of inventory, the percentage less selling isn't as, you're not being hit as hard, right? So I think that's really an interesting way to look at it. Steve, what's your magic ball? Not magic ball, crystal ball. What are your magic balls telling us for 2026?
Well, there's your intro right there.
Is that what they call them? My magic balls? Somebody out there does. Okay, so I had 5 predictions in my prediction video that went out. It's coming out? Went out. Obviously, I think sales are going to continue to be slow. I think we will do greater sales, but we're coming off of a 25-year low in sales. So what are the chances that you're going to have an even lower year after your lowest year? Probably very slim. So I think sales will stay slow but increase slightly, thankfully, hopefully. I cannot see a world where prices in my market at all, and condos, townhouses, no, I can't see anything going up. If anything, I think we're going to see another 5% reduction over the next 12 months across all asset classes. Like, if I'm looking all asset classes right now, we're down 6 in the city of Surrey. We're down 6.8% year over year. So I don't think we're going to see as big of a decline again. Interest rates gotta stay flat, I would assume. I think there's going to be good reason to increase interest rates and decrease interest rates. And I think the Bank of Canada wants to tap out and just say, we're staying right here. We want to be the least memorable year. Tiff Macklem wants to exit or do whatever he wants to do. Like, they just want it to be forgettable next year. And I think that's happening because there's not that many people too interested in their announcements anymore. I'm going to suggest that home sales of new construction of all types are basically going to be 0. Like a rounding error of almost 0.
New homes.
So of new homes. Yeah, that's because obviously the pre-sale condo market.
Yeah.
But to build a detached home in my market now, you have to sell that thing for at least 2.1 million to 2.2 million. And you can get the exact same product 20 years old for 1.5. So it's too cheap not to buy the old ones. Nobody's going to build the new ones. There's some vacant lots over by me. Nobody's building crap. There's 3 guys that built, and there's 4 more sitting just
And
empty.
that's, you're talking about just the building costs. Like, if they've owned that land for a long time, it might be doable,
Well,
right?
They bought that land at peak pricing.
Okay.
It ain't going anywhere. Right. So they're sitting. And then if you do the math on all of that, I think 2026 is going to see probably closer to the end of 2026. We're going to see a lot greater affordability compared particularly to now, but compared to a year ago, 2 years ago, affordability is going to be much, much, much better. It's going to get to a spot where our 1-bedroom condos again are back into the, I think, if they're not already there, 350,000 category. Let's say 350, 360. And now somebody with a good job that's single can afford that. And sure, they got to commute to an office somewhere and they might have to take the train, but it's like, oh, okay, I can get somebody with 2 salaries, like a household with 2 salaries can buy a nice 2-bedroom townhouse for $600,000 and everybody's happy again. I think that's where we're going to get.
I mean, both of your predictions look like it's going to be a pretty boring year, which is actually exciting news for me.
Which means that will not happen.
That's not going to happen.
What do you think, Tommy?
I wrote down 10. I'll hit them really quickly. There's a few that are more bold than maybe I wanted to be, but I didn't want to just like say things I knew were going to kind of happen.
Tom Storey Show is going to get to 10,000 subscribers.
That actually was one of mine. Yeah. But I feel like we should shoot higher than that. That's not big enough. We should say 12,000. But I think fixed rates are going to stay under 4% for most of next year. I know as of recording this, yes, the bond yield's gone up a little bit. I just have this feeling. See, you're making me feel bad about my first prediction already, Steve. But in a year from now,
Listen, everybody, all the freaking mortgage brokers, bond yields went up. Bond yields went up.
They go up and down all the time. I think
bond yields went right back up to 2.9% from 3. Yeah, you know when they were 2.9% last time? Like March when I got my 409. Okay, they're fine. They're fine.
So
bond yields are not at it might change. Bond yields are not 4.5%.
No, I think that most people getting fixed rate mortgages will be able to get them at 4% or slightly under for most of 2026. I think the overnight rate's going to stay at 2.5%. I think in the city of Toronto, our sales volume will be up 5% in total transactions. That doesn't mean much is going to change. A slight bump in consumer confidence in our market, and that can happen. Again, like our numbers were as bad as 2003. It's not going to take much for sales to be a little bit better. Condo prices are going to go down on average, if we're going to look at average price, another 4%, mostly based on the smaller stuff that's going to take the biggest hits in the prices. And the 2 beds are still going to move okay. Rental prices will be down another 4% from asking rents. I'm pretty confident in that for the city of Toronto. Same idea, new construction is going to suffer. Nothing's changing next year. It's not a 2026 thing where the needle moves. And then the mortgage renewal thing, which maybe we've talked about a little bit too much recently on this show, but there was actually, I missed this one point, which should have been obvious to me, which I've talked about in other years, but we've talked about so much, Steve, like this mortgage renewal stuff. We're like, okay, payment's going to be up, but you already stress tested and you're aggressively paying down your principal in the first 5 years. What I didn't even click in at is, you know, when people are like, when their bank says, hey, your mortgage renewal is coming up, here's your options. You know which option the bank's going to give a lot of Canadians and they're not even going to blink at and take because their payment's going to be lower? They're going to extend back to the beginning of their mortgage. And that's terrifying to me.
Banks will out. They're going to am out.
Of course they are. If they're like, we don't like that new payment, push it back to 30 years so my payment's lower. So their payment might actually be lower than last time, but they've just... Anyways, it's crazy that's going to happen.
Not even that they understand that though, Tom. Like, so what they do
is
they
the problem.
What the homeowner does is they go to the bank when they get that notice and they go, hey, I don't want to afford this. There must be a better rate or something better you can do to get my payment down. And then they go, there is something we can do to get your payment down. How about this payment? And they don't even realize.
Yeah, he's added 5 or 10 years back.
They just went like, oh, okay, that payment makes sense. Like so many people make their decision that way.
And I think it's a big difference if like you're doing that, but you're planning on selling in 1 or 2 years and you're not going to pay.
Right.
Like, you know, like there's a big difference if you're doing that or if you're doing that on a home that you're going to live in for the next 20 years. And now all of a sudden you're paying an extra $150,000 in interest or whatever it is. Right. Like it's the same thing for like people taking 30 years instead of 25 years. Like, yeah, I think if you're a first time home buyer, you're going to get into the market, you're going to be there for 4 or 5 years and sell. Maybe it is the right call for you. You can save more money, whatever. At the end of the day, it's like minimal over the 5 years in the grand scheme of things, especially if the home's growing in value. But like, you know, if you're going to live there for 20 years and it's your forever home, then yeah, you might want to consider not doing that. Yeah,
I'm concerned I've had conversations with people about this, saying like this was an option they were given. If you look at like, let's say you took a 25-year mortgage, you're now at 20 years, your renewal's coming up. So your balance is lower because your rate was so low at the beginning that you hit that initial loan pretty hard. And then the bank's saying, hey, we'll just push you back to 25 years. Your payment might actually come out being lower, even at a 4% rate versus the 2 that you had. I think the mortgage renewal cliff, at least in 2026, is not even a thing. It's the biggest nothing burger ever because Canadians But it's going to be a big issue in 5-10 years, I think, because people are just going to get nailed with more interest that they don't even recognize that this is happening. So I am concerned about that. I do think power of sales are going to be up, just because when we talked about with Brendan, I think 2 episodes ago, they're a bit of a lagging indicator. Like people suffering now, you'll see that in 2026, and you'll see those sensational headlines of power and sales up 75%. Like that will continue.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think the overall market in Toronto is going to be down about 2% in average sale price, mostly fueled by the condos not doing great. So those are my predictions. Any thoughts on those, boys?
I think you did great.
Sucks to be in a down market.
Yeah. I'm all right.
We're thriving out here. You can move out here and join Dan Realty Group.
I don't know. Your taxes are tough.
Experienced agent.
I don't know.
I will say, Tommy, I've been doing the foreclosure game here a little bit. I had a friend that bought a foreclosure last week. I figured out mathematically a little bit of the foreclosure game.
Okay.
And it's nothing I can share here.
Oh.
It would fall under the advice I would give to a client. I've figured out a lot of the math when it comes to foreclosures. It's obviously not as beneficial as people would like foreclosures to be financially. The purchasers would like them to be.
Sure.
But it's just a more of just pricing and where sales are going to go. We did some intel on the back end, and I have some very interesting stuff. I'll tell you off air, but very, very interesting.
Thanks for sharing something you're not allowed to talk about. I want to wrap things up.
I'm I'm smart, and I figured something out.
I went back and did some research. I think we'll skip the like why our clients move, because I think this next topic is maybe a little bit more interesting. Is the first time home buyer average age in Canada has continued to rise, mostly because, as Steve mentioned, they're playing too many video games. That's probably the issue here. But it's 36 years old in Canada and 40 years old in Ontario for a first time home buyer. Now, in the 1980s and 1990s, the average age was 29. So it's like it's increased pretty significantly over the past, 20, 30 years. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because something that's always stuck with me, and it's a very good point that Steve has made, is that wouldn't it be nice that when you're retired, you don't have a mortgage payment, at least on your primary residence? Investment properties, fine, whatever, if they're cash flowing. I agree with that. And the generation now of the boomers were much younger when they bought their property that's now worth 20 times what they paid for it, right? So they're retired, living nicely in a paid off home, but they got in their mid 20s or maybe their late 20s. If you're buying your first home now at 40 and you take a 30-year mortgage, I know you might jump around in between, but you're going to end up somewhere. It's just, you're so much older when that home is paid off. And I wonder, like, is it still worth it getting in later, having that same mindset? Like, I don't know. I had never really looked at the numbers like this. And something also really interesting is, so we peaked in home ownership rate in Canada, I think like 5 years ago at like 69%. We're now at 65%, at least as of like 2022. We actually have a higher home ownership rate more recently at 65% than we did in the 1970s. It was only 60% in the 1970s. But if you think all the boomer generation would have been buying houses between the 70s and the 80s, probably just based on like their age and when they were born. So that they've just had home ownership longer. So I wonder if you looked at new homeowner percentage in the last 10, 15 years, it's probably way lower, because the home ownership rate today is because people have just owned their homes for so long. So I'm not sure if I have any questions about this. I just thought this was interesting data.
Well, when you talk about the goal was never, for the boomers, in their defense, was never to have a house that's worth $1 million. So
they wouldn't have known that.
That wasn't known. What the goal is I need a house that's paid off. Right. So when I sat with my financial planner, I don't know, I've had him for a long time, but let's say right before the pandemic, probably, we sat down and we were just breaking down, numbers. And he said something that stuck with me, that made me go on this tear of paying down my home, which I'm glad Tommy has started to do, Andrew. He's starting to become almost 40 because he's starting to pay off his home faster. But my point is, if you get to retirement at 65 and you hit that magical day when, you know, you get your waffle party and then kicked out the door from your job, your life is a whole lot different if you have a housing cost versus virtually no housing cost. So if you still have at 68 years old a $3,500 a month, today's equivalent mortgage payment.
Yeah. Or it could be rental if they didn't get in the market, right?
It could be rental. It could be anything. I'm just saying your cost of shelter is your largest portion of your expenses all of the time. So if your job should be to get that down to zero by retirement, because when you run the things like CPP, old age pension, and hopefully some RSPs that you have lined up, it's actually not bad. It's not that bad. It's not great, but it's not that bad if your shelter cost is virtually zero, right? Sure, you got those high property taxes we were talking about, but that's a different thing. So that needs to be the goal for everyone. The goal needs to be, like, we're not trying to make billions of dollars. All those people that we found that were trying to flip stuff and make quick money, they're all getting burned now, and maybe rightfully so, maybe not. But the goal needs to be, by the time you file for your CPP, if it's still there when we get to do it.
Well, you're not too far away, Steve. You got like, what, 5 years?
Tom, you can go fuck
yourself. This whole segment is about Steve, right? I just want to clarify, this whole segment we're talking about is about Steve's current situation, right? Like, he bought his house for $70,000 back in 1993, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Here's one thing that you said, Tom, is like, is it still worth it? And I would say, like, here's the reality. Like, you're paying for somewhere to live, right? Regardless of where or how much or what type of product it is, you're paying for somewhere to live. So even if you're getting into your first home at 50 and you're going to retire at 65, even if it's not paid off, it still, to me, makes sense to buy something. And then at least you're getting you're recouping some of that cost, right? So if you're diligent, you're pumping money into RSPs, you're pumping money into TMSA, whatever, and you're really diligent financially, your primary residence is almost just like one further investment. So even if it's not paid off, if you retire and then you have and you still are paying your home, but you have a chunk of $200,000 sitting there, it's $200,000 you wouldn't have had if you were renting. And yeah, you can make the argument, well, it's a little more expensive or whatever. Well, not in every case, especially in cities where rents are like sky high, right? So like here, maybe, you're assuming you're buying below your need, like below your budget, you're like, maybe it costs an extra $500 a month, but maybe you're putting $1,000 a month back in your pocket with the equity you're gaining. And that's assuming the house doesn't even appreciate in value, which it's almost guaranteed to do. So to me, it still makes sense, but I think in a big way, and I was just looking at this because we were potentially talking about the real reason why people move, right? And we're not going to get into that full tilt, but I've had two situations lately. One is a firm deal that closes in February, and the other one is two buyers I'm working with right now. I just did a deal where, like, I think first-time home buyers are going to have to get much more creative, and they're going to have to really sacrifice to get into the market earlier. So my argument is, like, what's better, waiting until you're 35 or 40 to buy your first home on your own, or getting in at 27, 28, 30 with a friend, right? So I just did a deal where two couples bought a 2-unit property. They split it. They're each going to live in one unit. And I understand there's some ramifications that come with that. Like, what if you piss your friend off and you hate them or whatever? But like, realistically, these people that I'm talking about, like, they would probably not be able to get into the housing market for another 5 years minimum, based on what they'd have to save, based on their debt ratios and all this stuff. But now they're going to get in. They're going to reap the benefit of owning and paying down that mortgage. And even if after just 5 years they split off and go their separate ways, they're still going to be ahead of it. Like, when you bought your first condo, Tom, didn't you buy it with somebody else? Or maybe you had an investment one that you bought with somebody else. And my point is, at some point you reap the benefit from that. So I think, like, first-time home buyers are going to have to really start sacrificing in order to get into the market, whether that's they live at home for longer, whether that's they take the bus and don't have a car for a few extra years so they can save money. But the problem is the current generation doesn't want to do that, right? They don't want to sacrifice. They want to live downtown and go out with their buddies, and they're not willing to live at home in their parents' basement for the greater good of what that could create in 3 or 4 years. And I'm not talking about the people gaming in the basement not working or anything, Steve. I'm talking about like somebody who is at a university. They work at, I don't know, they have like a standard business or finance or software type job or something like that. They're making, I don't know, 70 grand a year. They have the ability to put some money away if they sacrifice for a couple of years. But a lot of them don't even want to do that, right? And that's not just that generation. There's people in my generation that were the same way. And like I spent a lot of my time trying to get a lot of my friends to house hack, for example, like talking 5, 6, 7 years ago. I'm 35. So a lot of my friends based on the market at the time back then were buying their first house around 26, 27, 28 years old. That is so difficult to do today compared to what it was 10 years ago, right? But like a lot of them didn't want a house hack. They just didn't want to do it. They're like, I don't want to deal with a tenant, whatever. And it's like, you could pay somebody 10% of the rent to deal with a tenant. You're still going to be way better off for it. But there's a breaking point here where young people are going to have to start sacrificing, or they're not going to get everything they want by the time in life that they want it. That's just kind of the reality of the way the world is right now.
I was lucky where like when I started my real estate career at 22, I lived in my parents' basement for that first year to save up to buy my first little condo. Like I literally, my first year of my real estate career, I lived with my parents in their basement, in their house. I never rented other than university when I went to Guelph, because you kind of had to do that there. And I just got in, and it's the best thing I ever did. But obviously I rode a pretty good wave of price appreciation as well. All right, boys. Yeah. Wrapping up the podcast for 2025, I want to say thank you to all the listeners that have been here with us this year. The show has grown humongously very much this year. Tons of new people. Comment section always makes my Sundays very entertaining, seeing what is going on. We get great guests like Andrew on the show, repeat guests. I think, what is this, 3, 4? You've been back here a bunch now.
Yeah, 3-time friend of the Tom Storey Show.
3-time friend of the show. Steve, thanks for co-hosting the show with me for the past year. And I don't know. I think we're just getting started, right? We're just warming up. Episode 190, whatever it is, we're just getting ready.
I was going to say, we've been doing it for 3.5 years, but thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
We're cooking.
You just
now.
Noticed for the last year that I've been here. I appreciate that. That's great. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. I'm spending it in Trump land, so should be good.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, good luck over there.
Bring some comments to the board.
Take your burner phone with you, Steve, when you're crossing the border. And
yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Media. Here you go.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year. And we will see you in 2026. Bye.
Bye.